Hi, I'm Psiman and welcome to today's video where I'll be talking about my experiences of using the Oculus Quest, which I've just had for a couple of days now. I'll also be making comparisons to the HTC Vive, which I've been using for a few years now, and hopefully what I'll talk about today will help you if you're thinking about buying an Oculus Quest or maybe even an HTC Vive, and at the end of the video maybe you'll be a bit closer to making a purchase. And if you are considering making a purchase, well, I'd very much appreciate you having a look at the Amazon links that I've got down below, because if you do make a purchase through Amazon, I will make a small commission from that, and small commissions will help to maintain this channel. They all add up. So thank you very much if you do that. Now I will say that I wasn't loaned or wasn't given this. I paid £500 for this headset. It's the 128GB version. You can also buy a 64GB version for £400. I decided to go for the higher amount because I thought I'd end up filling up that memory quite quickly. I'm going to be talking about a few different areas today. Obviously, I'm going to be talking about what it looks like and sounds like inside the headset, but I'll also talk about build quality. I'll be talking about the controllers, the tracking, and battery life as well, because these are all important factors when deciding whether to get one of these or not. So let's start with the build quality and the overall design, because one of the big differences between these two options is the way in which it tracks. So this system has what's called inside-out tracking. You can see maybe there are 4 little cameras here, and these allow it to orient itself in the world and also to be able to see the controllers to track those. And in fact, it's very easy to set up once you put on the headset. It's first got a very nice little feature where it shows you how to adjust the headset to find the right sweet spot. Just, I think, 4 green lines in the center. So you can adjust the headset up and down to find the sweet spot for your eyes, and then adjust the slider at the bottom in or out to match the distance between your eyes. So once you've got it set up and it's clear as it possibly can, you can then set up what's called the Guardian system, which is a boundary that you set within your room. And it's so easy to do on this system because all you have to do, there's a video pass through, so you can see the real world in monochrome through the headset. It's not stereoscopic, so it does look a little bit weird, but it's good enough for you to be able to trace out the floor or the free space you've got on your floor, and then that sets up a protective boundary and a warning system within the games and experiences when you get too close to it, so you don't accidentally trip over things or bump into things. So very easy to set up. Much more so. I mean, this is not difficult to set up, but it does require putting up 2 base stations in your room which fire out little invisible infrared lasers, a grid which it uses to track using the sensors that are on the headset, and you have to then use one of the controllers and walk around the room and map out that, again, similar. They call it the chaperone system on this, but again, it's another boundary grid that comes up if you get too close to it. A word about the tracking though, because that's another difference between these two. These controllers are tracked by the headset. These controllers have sensors in them which they track their own position based on the infrared laser grid, which they then send back to the computer. But this system is more robust. I have to say that what we've got here with this inside-out tracking system works very, very well. As a point of comparison, PSVR is much worse when it comes to tracking than this is. This is far superior to PSVR, but it's not as good as this. This is perfect one-to-one tracking to the nearest millimeter, and it's very rare for me to have any issues in it, even with this controller. I've got a sticker on it. This is one I've whacked against the wall a couple too many times, and some of the sensors on the bottom seem to not work very well, because if I turn it upside down it gets a little bit lost. But when this is working properly, it's really, really good. But I suppose one of the big differences we're talking about here is price. If you are thinking, well, do I get a PC-based system or do I get a mobile system? Well, let's look at the costs. So let's say you go for £500 for this one. Well, if you want the setup I've got here today, you're looking at about £500 just for the headset, the 2 controllers and the 2 base stations that are in my room. If you want the replacement head strap, yes, this doesn't come with this head strap for the speakers built into it, that's another £100. And then we've got this here. This is the wireless adapter that comes with a battery pack and something just out of view of the camera here, but there's a little transmitter on the top of my second monitor back there. And so that entire setup is going to set you back about £900. Okay, 500, 900, but that's not the whole thing, because this doesn't work unless you've got a good enough PC. And I would recommend spending about £1,000 minimum on a PC, good enough to get a wireless experience on this system. You can spend less, a bit less, and get a PC that's good enough to do a tethered experience. But if we're kind of going apples for apples, then you're looking at about £1,800–1,900 starting to get maybe not an experience that looks, this looks better in some respects, because you've got a much more powerful processing system generating the experience, but they're really quite close. Stunned is a word that I think I can use to describe how I've felt about this. I've been really impressed, even though I'd heard going into this that this is better than you would think it would be. I regularly watch a show on the channel Tested called Projections, and I've been watching that since the very early days of PC VR. And yeah, they said on that, yeah, this is actually much better than you would imagine, having come from this. And I have to second that, because it's not as good, but in some ways, this is better. 2 of those ways are, one, that the resolution is higher on this, so text is sharper, things are a bit more readable. What's called the screen door effect is less noticeable. So you can't make out the individual pixels as easily on this as you can on that one. And a big difference is the controllers. These are so much better than these. The tracking isn't quite as accurate, but the ergonomic comfort of these, far superior. I have a pet hate for these controllers. Or maybe hate is a bit strong, but a real dislike for those. I don't like the shape of them. They're just, they're functional, but I don't like using them. Whereas these, they just sit in your hands comfortably. They've got little thumbsticks rather than trackpads. The buttons are nicer, and it's got little trigger grips rather than grip buttons, which are a big improvement over those. I'm really looking forward to the end of next month, the end of June, when I can get when the index controllers will be delivered. I've already bought them, so I'm waiting for those to arrive, because that will greatly enhance the experience. Interaction and controller input is a really big part of VR, and it's much more important than I would have thought it was before having spent a lot of time using this system. Okay, so visuals are very good. In some respects better than this, in other respects not as good, because running on kind of middle of the road mobile hardware, you're not going to get anything that the actual complexity of the world that's being built will not look as good as what's on here. But there are some titles that are on both systems, and to be honest, they don't look much worse on this. So Beat Saber, Space Pirate Trainer, that's another couple that I can think of that I've got a lot of experience playing, and they're both very, very good on that. Again, coming back to tracking, not quite as good as this, and it doesn't feel quite as good. I prefer them on this system, but the price difference, you've got to hand it to Oculus. They've built a fantastic system here. Another big improvement, well, no, not improvement. It's an improvement over what I was expecting, is the audio. I was really expecting the audio on this to be awful because, as you can see, we don't have big headphones clamped on the side like we do with the Vive Deluxe audio strap or the original Oculus Rift. And what it actually has is these kind of chunky arm straps have got two little speakers, one for each side, and the sound is piped into your ears through these. And it's actually good. I thought it was going to be really weak and that it was going to struggle to give me any kind of spatial audio. But games that I've played on this that require being able to accurately point out where things to identify where things are in space based on their sound, like in Space Pirate Trainer, or the very good Vader Immortal, which is more of a story experience than a game. But in that as well, when in the section where you're using the lightsaber and there are the little drones flying around firing at you, I had no problem picking out exactly where they were in space and being able to turn around and defend myself against them. So I'm really impressed with that. Another thing that works well in its favour is the battery life of the controllers. I'm a big fan of removable batteries, and these run on a single AA battery, and they've got this really nice little magnetic cover that pops open, and you can just swap out the battery. I've got a lot of rechargeable AA's, and so these things last for hours. I've probably used the headset for 7 or 8 hours, and I think both controllers are down to about 70% now. So plenty of playtime out of the batteries, and these batteries that are in here came with the controllers. I mean, not that these don't. These last for quite a long time on a single charge as well, but of course, as these are 3 years old now, they don't last as long as when I first got them. The headset itself lasts for about 2 to 3 hours, depending on which games you're playing. But I've found that that's not a problem. There's nothing I've played on it that's made me want to play for more than an hour anyway. And also the fact that it's not as comfortable to wear as this one. I mean, this probably looks ugly, unwieldy, bulky, but this is actually much better weighted than this is. And this is very, very front heavy. It's not a very heavy device, but all of this is probably about the same weight as the front part of that. And as you can see from this photo, it leaves quite bad red marks. I mean, that photo was taken after using it for about an hour. In fact, the first time I used this, I was in here, I tried it out, and I went downstairs to tell my wife about how good it is, and she just burst out laughing. She said, "Oh God, you look ridiculous." And yeah, I did. I looked like a hot, sweaty mess, even though I didn't feel particularly hot. I mean, I'm sure this does get quite warm because all of the processing's in here, but I didn't notice feeling hot and sweaty, but I definitely looked it. So I mean, it's always the problem with VR that you're never going to look good with this thing on your head. But out of all of the headsets I've tried, this is the one that I probably look worse in or out of when I take it off. So another little thing to consider there as a slight downside to it. So we've talked about kind of the ergonomics, the build quality, what it looks like through the headset, the controllers, the battery life, and the price. And, you know, when you sum all of those things up, I think if you've never tried virtual reality before, you'd be really happy with this. In fact, I'd imagine you'd be blown away by how good it is. If you are someone like myself who's come from a PC-based system, it's still worth having, because the experiences they've got in it that are pretty close to what's on the PC. As I said before, they're much closer to what I would expect it to be. I've been really surprised by how good it is. I'm not going to be getting rid of this system because it is that bit better, and I've spent a lot of money investing in this system. I think if you're coming from PSVR, you'd really enjoy the upgrade in visual fidelity, or at least the sharpness of the image, the quality of and the tracking of the controllers. The only thing you'd be leaving behind is that really good game library. There are a lot of titles on PSVR, and a lot of them that are exclusive and can't be touched anywhere else. I'm really hoping that when the PS5 comes out, that Sony brings out a much more robust tracking system, and hopefully a wireless solution, even if it is just as an add-on. I'd really like that as well. I haven't got a PSVR, and I don't plan on getting one, but I do want to play a lot of those games, so my fingers are crossed for PlayStation 5 having a good VR setup, because of course it's going to be completely backwards compatible with all of the titles from PS4. So, as I said at the beginning of the video, there are affiliate links to all of the things that I've mentioned today, and I'd really appreciate it if you are thinking about purchasing one of these and you've enjoyed the video and I've helped you in some way towards making that purchase choice, that you consider using one of those affiliate links to make your purchase. So, thank you very much for watching. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. If you've tried it, you enjoy it, or you hate it, if you're thinking about getting one, any questions you might have, put it all in the comments down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks so much for watching. From my games room to wherever you are, this is Psiman signing off. Bye-bye.